Oh no, are you telling me there's no sound? Okay, let's go through that again then. I had to change my earphones, but sorry about that. I think I'm going to have to stop the screen and then do it again. Sorry, I'm not quite sure why that happened. Hi, guys. Okay, so you can hear now. Okay, so you can hear me. Okay, so I'm going to play that again. It's obviously Kaylee's parents speaking, and what I want you to pay attention to, you may have heard it already, but what I want you to pay attention to is the quite detailed description of the nature of Jack and Kaylee's relationship right up until the end. That they were talking to one another every day, that the relationship was on the mend, which suggests that they were going to get back together. That they were childhood friends, also that Kaylee wanted to take a break, just Kaylee's decision, right? And so let's listen to that. I'll try and get the right spot if I can.
And Jack is just as distraught as we are. It's heartbreaking with his sisters, including Maddie. She every time we traveled out of the country or went on vacations, Maddie went with us. So this is both of our girls.
So it starts here. It starts from this point.
For who killed them.
We want to do everything that we can do in our power to get justice for your daughter. We keep hearing this name, Jack, and phone calls going back and forth. Can you tell us anything about that?
We love Jack. Absolutely love Jack. We stand behind Jack 1,000%. Jack was Kaylee's boyfriend for many years. They just recently broke up. There was no animosity at all. It was a breakup on Kaylee's point. It was not, they still talked every single day. Kaylee just thought that she needed a little break. They were on the mend of getting back together. Kaylee talked to Jack the whole time she was here for that week and a half.
One of her last messages, she reached out to Jack and said, Jack, get back to me. And he didn't. She goes, we share a dog together, which they did. She's like, you need to reach out to me. So
please come over. She was wanting Jack to come over. Jack is not. They're wasting their time with Jack, and Jack is just as distraught as we are.
Okay, so well, the very last thing that you heard there was she said Jack is just as distraught as we are. Well, have we heard from Jack? So the other thing is that Jack was the recipient of a bunch of texts and I think calls. And did he respond to them? So were there any responses to those 10 calls before 911 was called? I think that's really an interesting question, right? John Hammer says, does he have an alibi? The answer is that he was apparently sleeping at the time. But I want to play you something else, and let's see if I'm at the right spot with that. So just give me a second just for it to get through that piece. So I'm going to deal with my position and what we sort of talking about here in a second. But I first want to get law enforcement's take specifically on Jack, although he's not really named here, I don't think. So let's get to that.
Hi, Christina Corbin with Fox News. The male subject whom the women called, has he been ruled out as a suspect or person of interest?
Everything that we have taken from those calls, we have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
So it's difficult to know what to read into that. He was asked a specific question and he gave quite a non-specific answer. Basically, has that individual being ruled out, right? And that is, in the words of Nick Fury,
that's a yes or no question.
Has that person been ruled out, right? So again, we've got to make sure that we're not reading too much into something. In other words, we need to ask questions and gather information, right? Let's listen to the way he answers that question one more time. We're going back
Killer,
too far.
the 911 caller?
So what I'll say,
Christina Corbin with Fox News. The male subject whom the women called, has he been ruled out as a suspect or person of interest?
everything that we have taken from the
So again, it could just be the way that he answers it. It's not necessarily something, but he doesn't just say, yes, he's been ruled out, right? There seems a little bit of hesitation there. And you must remember there are legal consequences to being absolute and adamant. If it does turn out to be Jack, for example, and the cop has said here, no, we're ruling him out, and there's a trial, it could come back to haunt him. On the other hand, you can kind of imagine that they are trying to protect the privacy of certain individuals, but which ones do you know to protect? So you may have gotten this feeling that the law enforcement want to protect the community of students, but one of those students could be the killer. In other words, a student could be the killer. So that's the weird dichotomy that's playing out, right? Let's play the rest of his answer here.
from those calls, we have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
So did you hear? He says we followed up on, then he says we've cleared, and then he says there's no connection there. And then he sort of looks, well, I guess a guy was walking by him at that point. You could argue it's semantics, that he just doesn't want to say the kid's name, which I would agree with. I'm only calling him Jack in this. I think a lot of you know who I am talking about. But I think we need to ask a few questions. And I feel quite uncomfortable going down this route because I'm the first person to say, don't target certain individuals, and that's not what we're doing. We're simply following the information that we have. We're just exploring a dynamic that we do know about. I don't want this to feel or look like or even be a witch hunt. It's really just let's get some further information, get some further context. Let's ask questions and be curious and not rush to judgment, right? So I want you guys to, as we go down this road, not do that. We're not trying to say guilty, exclamation mark. We're trying to say, what do we know about this person? What do we know about that person? I think it's also important to address the following. And I'm also saying this not to criticize law enforcement or to undermine law enforcement, just to remind ourselves that law enforcement, like everyone else, is fallible, right? Kaylee's parents may not know the dynamics as intimately as they think they do, as parents often don't with youngsters, right? So in terms of this argument that police make mistakes, remember in the Kylie Rodney case, they didn't take that ping perhaps seriously enough, and the ping basically located where she was, and there was the mistake of searching where the campground area was. Anyway, that was a mistake. In the Delphi case, I don't know whether you could say they didn't clear Richard Allen or that they just forgot about him, but that was a mistake. In the Gabby Petito case, the law enforcement made a mistake with Brian. They misunderstood that situation. In the JonBenet Ramsey case, the officer simply didn't look in the basement room, the wine cellar. So they can and they do make mistakes. And I think in the same way that you shouldn't rush to judge someone and declare them guilty, you should also not rush to declare anyone innocent. I think there are some exceptions to that. So I think, for example, the roommates, I think it is or was necessary to provide clarity in that context, because they're under enough stress as it is, they're under enough trauma as it is. Even there, you could say maybe it's a little bit hasty, but it doesn't look like the perpetrator is female. I think one can say that with relative certainty, without any real proof, just because I think the stats will show, and we can maybe look at that. We can look at the stats of knife wielding female killers. Well, there's Jodi Arias, but how many others are there? Not many. Yeah, hoodie guy is not the Jack that we're talking about. Okay, so did you guys catch what the parents said? That it was kind of a very compound statement with lots of information in there, that they had been together in a relationship for years. So it's going back a really long time, that they seemed to be like they were cycling, coming back round to get back together. Do you guys believe that that's true? Do you believe that Kaylee was going to get back together with Jack? So that's the statement the parents made. Just in that aspect, do you think that that is true? That Kaylee intended to get back together with Jack? Let's see what you guys say. Yeah. So far, everyone's saying no. Yeah. I don't think it's true either, because for starters, Kaylee was going to be going to Texas. She was going to be getting a job in Texas. And although we don't know that much about Jack, I doubt whether he was also going to Texas. So Kaylee getting a job in Texas would have really very likely spelt the end of their relationship. Elizabeth says, yes, I did think they were going to get back together. Well, they weren't really spending the final weekend together. I mean, he was at home, I guess, sleeping. They were partying. And that brings up another really interesting bit of information. And that is, in a way, Kaylee wasn't even supposed to be there that weekend. Kaylee, I'm not sure if she was finished her exams. She was due to graduate later, but she was actually home just prior to that. Bear in mind, she grew up in Idaho. Jack also grew up in Idaho, but she went home earlier in the week, and then she bought a car. Did you guys know that she bought a Range Rover, a new Range Rover? And then she was in two minds about going back to college. And then in the end, she decided to go back. This is again according to her parents. I think according to her mother, she wanted to show Maddie her brand new Range Rover. So one actually assumes that when you look at some of those crime scene photos, one of those vehicles parked in front of that must be her vehicle, must be the Range Rover. So she wanted to take it to Moscow to show Maddie and then also attend that party. So the question is, did she see Jack when she returned there? There was a chance that she wasn't going to return, but she did return. At the end of that night, you got the idea that she and Maddie were apologizing to Jack that you're still part of our group. But bear in mind, she posted that Instagram post saying, these are my favorite people, or these are the people that I love, right? And who wasn't in that picture? Also, who wanted to be in that picture but wasn't in that picture? So this was 144 weeks ago, which, what is that? It's about 3 years ago, 2019, I guess. Valentine's Day, and it's related to Jack, right? So they had been in quite a long relationship, and they were apparently still speaking every day. So they were definitely still quite good friends. So was Jack, from Jack's perspective, did he feel like he was being strung along? Did Jack feel like he knew what was going on in terms of their relationship? And I find it quite interesting, this particular image. I'm sorry that it's, can I rotate it? This is from Kaylee's Instagram, and it reminds me of one of Gabby Petito's photos of Brian Laundrie, where he's also facing a view and he's got his back to the camera. I don't know if you guys know which one I'm talking about. Okay, I want to see if I can just find that Instagram post, that final Instagram post, because it is important to refer to. Am I going to be able to find it? I know you know which one I'm referring to, but where she says these are the most important people, or I love these people. It's this one. It's this one, but I'm really looking for the text. Maybe I should just go into Instagram. But the fact that that came up and it was sort of her last visit, you can imagine that could be quite painful for the person who's not in that picture, and also isn't going to be in that picture going forward. Now, if you think about this, this is almost like the end of the party. This is like the final. This is significant because it's the final party, the final chapter, the final sentences of that college chapter, and who is in that story and who isn't. Does it end happily ever after with you, or are you not part of that happily ever after? And can you imagine if you thought or assumed all along that you were going to be part of that happily ever after, only to find out, oh, this is the situation. I am actually in the friend zone. I sort of suspected it all along. So yeah, that's true. The dog Murph was spared. That's the other half of this whole equation. Is the father, in that clip that you heard, the father said, Kaylee's father said, what was in the text, and the text was that let me see if I can get it verbatim, but the text actually referred to the dog Murph. See if I can so there it is. They had a dog named Murphy, and he was found unharmed inside the house, not outside, no, not running around outside. And they say it's still not clear to whom the dog belonged. Well, it is quite clear now. It belonged to Kaylee and Jack. It seems like it was Jack's gift to Kaylee, right? And there you can actually see him with the dog. And what I find quite interesting with this image is he's sporting a beard, right? So there's sort of a slight contradiction here. It's sort of warm and fuzzy. I suppose you're going to say one's reading too much into it, but he's sort of cuddling the dog and it's quite warm and fuzzy. But on the other hand, he's sort of got a beard, and it's to some extent a masculine self-identifier, right? And I mean also Ethan's got kind of moustache. It's kind of the way that some young men try and show that they're more mature than they really are, that they try and show that they're older than they really are. But he's sporting kind of a beard and sort of a plaid shirt, and I think on the hat it says Minnesota. Not quite sure what it says there. I think it's Minnesota. But the beard and the shirt, and I guess the cap, are sort of masculine tropes in a way. Cuddling the dog is a little bit different, I think. I think that's sort of a sympathy, maybe a sympathy card, maybe a cutesy wootsy card, if you know what I mean. He does have a really young face. Okay. So that's a triple axe murderer. Yeah, it just happens to also be sporting a beard there as well. I didn't really mean to go down that area. So again, I want to just be clear that what we want to do is ask questions, not be soldiers fortifying our position. We're not trying to say he's the one, don't look anywhere else, we found the person. We don't want to say that. What we want to say is let's look at this person that looks like law enforcement have already dismissed. Not in a way beyond just let's find out a little bit more. There are some dynamics here that kind of raise eyebrows, to put it mildly, right? How serious is a relationship where you give somebody a dog, right? How serious is a relationship where that happens? It tends to be on the serious side, right? Yeah, so that's true. Wolfie says, if not Jack, someone like him. Yeah, it could be. But then who is that? Where is an X floating around in the story? Now, it could be that Kaylee had maybe a few flings, that she broke up with Jack or pushed him into the friend zone in order to sort of have a couple of relationships, and perhaps out in that sort of milieu, someone was hurt or pushed aside, right? But there's a problem with that whole assessment. Is someone that you've just met is unlikely to have developed that level of deep feeling to bear a serious grudge, not only against you, but against 3 other people as well. It's unlikely that there'd be this deep reservoir of feeling from whatever one night stand or meet, because everyone's doing that at university. Maybe someone wasn't. Maybe one person wasn't doing that while everyone else was. Maybe that one person was waiting. So I made this analogy, and where I made it, someone made the mistake of thinking I was saying certain things that I wasn't. So I'm going to share an intertextuality with you guys, and it's really important that you pay attention to what I'm saying and also not misconstrue what I'm saying. So I wrote a book some time ago. So I'm going to tell you a short sort of story, provide you with some sort of analysis, basically talking about that in order for these kinds of crimes to happen, you need deep reservoirs of feeling, right? For these kinds of crimes. So either we have multiple victims, or where the type of the execution of it is of such a nature that there's a lot of emotion involved, right? So you need either of those. In this case, you've actually got both of them, right? So I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to bring it back to this case, right? So it doesn't translate directly. It's a little bit indirect, but it nevertheless is worth mentioning. So a couple of years ago, I wrote a book on Patrick Frazee. He murdered his fiancée in a very brutal way, but his girlfriend or former girlfriend helped him. She was an accessory in terms of cleaning up the crime scene. And a lot of people were saying that she was exactly like Nicole Kessinger, that Nicole Kessinger was just like her. Nicole Kessinger was the mistress in the Chris Watts case. She'd only known Chris Watts 5 weeks, or so, like intimately, right? And the important distinction to make was that the mistress in the Patrick Frazee case had a much deeper reservoir of feeling with Patrick Frazee. They had, I think she'd had a miscarriage. She, I think, wanted to marry him, and then he ended up, she wanted to marry him. She ended up marrying somebody else. And then they still wanted to get back together. There was sort of marriage infidelity taking place. Anyway, they knew each other for quite a long time. He also bought her a dog. I think he bought her a collie, right? And she ultimately came and helped him clean up the crime scene where he murdered his fiancée. You could only have that kind of thing where, and this is an accessory, it's not actually someone committing the crime, where there's a deep reservoir of feeling going back years, right? where your commitment to that person overrides certain moral constraints, right? And so I think we're talking about something similar here, where someone's moral code is overwritten by strong emotion, by a feeling of you've ruined my life. My life has been torn apart by this, and so I'm going to do that to you. You've ruined my life. You and you and you have ruined my life. I've built my whole life around this person, right? Isn't that what had happened, right? So Catherine says, I'm trying to solidify the relationship with the dog. It's interesting that you guys are trying to get ahead of that, but I suppose it is time that we deal with that. Looks like everyone is talking about the dog. Okay, so let's talk about the dog. So the dog's name is Murphy. And yeah, I think we need to go back a step before we deal with that. I think we need to just ask the question, who is the odd man out? And I think the key to that is the dog. Where does the dog come from? Well, the dog came from Jack, right? You can, in a weird way, say, who's the odd man out in that house? Well, it's a dog. What's a dog doing there? And ultimately, the dog wasn't harmed in the same way as in the Chris Watts case, the dog wasn't harmed. If you think about it, people have been saying that a dog was something that was done to a dog, right? Well, if that's the case, well, this dog wasn't harmed. So do you think there is really a link between those two things? I don't. Initially I did, but if that was the case, some kind of animal-like killer, well, then why wouldn't he have killed this dog in this case? Because the dog would have been in the way. The dog would have been a nuisance. The dog would have been a threat. In fact, if the dog was allowed to run around in the house, the dog could actually, to some extent, inform the crime scene. The dog running through the house through blood, those blood traces could show also how the crime evolved. Does that make sense? The flip side of it is you would want to know the character of the dog. Did the dog normally bark? What happened at night? When there were guests, what happened? How did they normally deal with the dog? Was the dog part of the family? The fact that the dog was inside seems to suggest that whoever entered the house didn't feel that the dog, so not killing the dog was a decision. And the second decision was not putting the dog outside, because that would have been an easy way of getting rid of the dog so that the dog's not in the way. I suppose you could argue that the dog was put inside and then he entered through the door that was left open. Perhaps that's why the door was left open, so that the dog could go back inside. Who knows? But the dog brings up quite a few. It kind of forces you to not abandon this sort of area of questioning, because one of the very last messages to Jack, in fact, one of the very last things Kaylee said was, "We share a dog." But then Jack is not in that final picture, basically saying, "This is the last picture of our college years. I love these people. Why is Jack not in that picture?" Well, isn't it because Jack wasn't in the picture? Jack's not in the picture because Jack's not in the picture. Jack's not in the picture because he is the odd man out. Does that make sense? Deborah says, could Murphy recognize the perpetrator? I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I would imagine that if the perpetrator is Jack, then he wouldn't need to worry about Murphy. Whereas if the perpetrator is someone else, you would imagine he would have to worry. But I think one's also got to look at the nature of certain dogs. Certain dogs bark when someone's at the door. Yeah, so I think one does need to look at that. Lisa says, what breed dog? Because mine would bark unless they trust you. Yeah, I think one does need to look at the breed of dog. I'm actually not sure what it is. I actually don't know myself. So some dogs are, their breed gives you a good idea of their personality, whereas others, let me put it this way, certain breeds of dog give you a good idea of their personality, but they nevertheless have a distinctive personality within that. So, for example, I've got a Schnauzer, and although he is a very sociable animal and so on, he's also a lot more energetic than most Schnauzers. So you've got to take that into account. You've also got to imagine if in the middle of committing the crime, the dog is hanging around, surely the dog would be alarmed by what it's seen. Often dogs do react to what they're seeing. If you're running around the house, they might get excited. They might think it's a game, right? In the beginning, at least. So, don't you agree that when the police were asked basically a yes or no question, although his name wasn't mentioned, is this boy cleared? The answer was sort of iffy. It was sort of, it wasn't yes or no, but it was sort of saying that we don't suspect him. Okay. So that's the first thing I kind of wanted to get through. So this is what's to me quite pertinent, is the fact that there's a really deep relationship going on here. I think the only deeper relationship between Kaylee and Jack was Kaylee and Maddie. Like, do you get that sense that the only within that scenario, the only deeper and more long-term relationship was Kaylee's relationship with Maddie. And so is that why Maddie was also killed? Because Maddie, in the killer's mind, also got in the way of his happily ever after. And I kind of want to, it's a good question. Did the dog have any blood on it? It's a good question. No, the dog was not outside. The dog was not outside. Well, it was found inside. But I think one also needs to know, where was the dog found? Was it found behind the door? Also, if the dog was inside, wasn't it barking because it wanted to get out by noon? Is that what woke up the people that were staying there? Okay. So just to repeat, it was Kaylee who wanted an amicable break. I find it very worrying that the parents say that they were getting back together. Maybe Kaylee did want to get back together until she got her job placement. Maybe that was unexpected. Maybe it was unexpected for Kaylee. Maybe it was unexpected for Jack. Maybe it was unexpected for everyone. But that job placement was essentially the death knell. Well, I'm going there, and I thought we were going to get back together. If I was going to leave college and go back home, well, then we would gravitate back to each other. But maybe that was the nasty surprise. You see, they'd been dating for years. They'd been childhood friends. Also, it's interesting that Jack has not responded to a request to discuss the case. So it's interesting that Jack's kind of remained silent in a way. Jack was, and I think the silence is also interesting. Why didn't he respond to those texts? If he was already sleeping, it means he had like a little bit of a, what's the word? What do they call it? I'm going to give you Yeah, and a little bit of a time advantage because he was already asleep. So that would suggest that he should have woken up perhaps earlier. So I think a really important question in this case is, what time did Jack go to bed? And then you can backtrack 7 or 8 hours. What time should Jack have woken up? And did anyone see Jack walking around woken up, right? And if in that case, if you'd woken up and you looked at your phone, why didn't you respond to those messages? Was it because you were upset? Was it because you had decided that it was over from your perspective? Or was it because he knew that there was no point because they were no longer alive? Or did he look at those messages after it emerged that they were no longer alive, which would be an innocent reason not to respond? Yeah, I noticed 3 in the morning. I'm saying if he woke up at 10 or 11 or 12, I think it was 911 was called at 12:58. If he woke up, say, at 11, why would he not have responded then? Just saying whatever. John says, how do we know he never responded? Yeah, we don't. So that's the question. Did he respond? The inference is made that he didn't because Kaylee's sister downloaded her call logs and she said these were the last messages on her phone, right? All these calls to Jack, all these, I guess, messages to Jack. I think she would have said, Jack said, it's okay, or Jack said, see you later, if that was part of the final calls. Does it make sense that the fact that she didn't say that, saying these were the last messages, it assumes that there weren't any responses. Brick Slot says, I'm nearly always asleep at 3 a.m. Okay, so I think we're going to go through a couple of other aspects. I want to deal with the Idaho press conference. I never covered that. And I've got a couple of ideas to share with you guys in terms of that. And do you remember in the press conference, the point was made, so I'll just put that up over there. The point was made that by law enforcement saying, we don't know how it was committed without waking the others. That's what law enforcement actually conceded. We don't know how it was committed without waking anyone up. And so if you take just that that idea in isolation, let's examine that. How did he do it? So it's actually, how did he do it without waking anyone up, right? Please slow the chat. Okay, give me a moment to do that. See if I can. I'm going to slow the chat, so just give me a second to go into that. How is everyone doing while I'm sort of doing this? How is everyone doing? In other news, the Delphi killer is going to court today. So that's something we're also looking out for. Okay, so let's just go into here. Hopefully that'll be good enough. Okay. Okay, so that's done. Okay, so I thought the best information that came out of the press was during the Q&A with the media. I don't think it was terribly, the entire press conference was sort of neither here nor there. Virtually nothing came out except that the neither of the roommates called 911. yeah. So anyway, so we're going to deal with how did he do it. And I think we do know how. I think we've got a fairly good idea how how this was committed without waking anyone. I did deal with it in a previous analysis where we looked at the interior of the home. So we're going to kind of do that again in a little bit more detail. So can you guys see that? Let's take that away. So I think you could even start off without even thinking about this. You could say, how could somebody commit a crime inside a house with 6 people and not wake anyone up? Well, isn't the answer that simply that person had been inside that house before, right? Just that. How could someone go inside the house, perhaps kill 4 out of 4 people he meant to kill and not kill 2 out of 2 people he didn't mean to kill, and do it successfully? Well, isn't he very short answer? Well, he'd been in that house before. Unfortunately, that doesn't really take you anywhere because a lot of people had been in that house before. It was a party house. So it's basically all that is doing is it's narrowing your suspects likely to a student, which I think is kind of obvious anyway. So let's kind of continue with that. This is what we do know. Number one, we're going to deal with 10 aspects. How did he do it? This is what we do know. Number one, all the victims and survivors were asleep, right? Everyone in that house was asleep. And the survivors were likely in deep sleep, having arrived home at 1 a.m., almost an hour earlier. So that's the word I was looking for, head start. The survivors had gotten a head start sleep-wise on everyone else, and so that would make it harder to rouse them. You don't need to be drunk. You just need to be tired, and sometimes you don't even need to be tired. If you are in that deep sleep, sometimes very little can wake you. So anyway, that is their situation. That, and then being sequestered, the fact that their bedroom is, all the way somewhere else. So if you look at this image here, it's the same as my background, right? If you just imagine that most of the crime is being committed in this block, right? So basically, I think there's a bedroom, I think it's over here. And then on the far side, you can't see it behind this tree, but that's in terms of this level. And then the other one is over here, and then on the opposite side over here. Well, the bedroom of the survivors was one level down, right? So it's not even really in this picture. So that would be one reason why they wouldn't hear anything, is because it's out of this frame. It's in a way also that they're out of the picture, right? Okay, does that make sense? One is that they're in a deep sleep. Number two, they are where they are in the house. They are sequestered, almost in the basement level of the house. That may explain why they didn't wake up in quite a simple way. Okay, so that's number one. Let's go to number two. Number two, there was no forced entry. So again, how was this criminal able to commit this crime without waking anyone up? So it's how could they commit the crime? That's the first big question, but also without waking anyone up. Well, there's no forced entry. If there was forced entry, that probably would have woken someone up. And if anyone, wouldn't it have woken up Murphy, right? Forced entry would have probably woken up Murphy, a rattling at the door, right? Something like that. Stephanie, is chat slowed down enough? I hope it is. I did slow down. Is it slowed down enough? Just let me know. So there's no forced entry. Also, forced entry would involve breaking something. So a window, a door, a hinge or whatever. None of that happened. So that allowed whoever to come in and not wake any of the residents, but who knows, maybe didn't wake up Murphy either. And where was Murphy? Was he at the top, right at the top in Kaylee's room? That would also make sense. Was Kaylee's door closed? Was it usually closed? You sort of want to know things like that. It's good. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so shall I go to, let's put that up for now. So now we go to number 3. Some of the victims may actually have woken that. So if you say, how did he commit this without waking anyone? Some may have actually woken up, but just assumed, well, there's 6 people in this house. Maybe someone is going to the bathroom. Maybe someone is visiting someone else. Maybe someone who's visiting is leaving. I mean, I don't think the first 2 went to bed would know absolutely what the plans would be of everybody else, right? Do you guys agree with that? But I think, I mean, we don't know this, but it's possible that the survivors confided with law enforcement that, did you sleep through the whole night? Did you wake up at any point? It's possible that they did. Maybe to visit the restroom. Often when you drink, at some point, especially if you kind of passed out, that alcohol's got to come out. Or if you've eaten right before you went to bed, maybe at some point that's got to come out as well. So did they get up at a certain point? Question like that. But I mean, you've even heard the neighbors saying, no, we didn't really hear anything. I do want to show you a photo from a distance. I just need to see if I can find it. Let me see if I've got it here. I want to show you a photo of this house from quite far away. It's not here. I wonder if I've got it somewhere else. I wonder if. So anyway, let me just put this picture up in the meantime. So that's the dog. That's Murphy. That's the dog that Jack gave to Kaylee. What do you think the meaning of giving the dog was to? Don't you think it was to remind her and maybe somebody else that there's something going on with us? It was perhaps like a gift with several agendas. One of them is, it's almost like when you give someone flowers, it's a symbol of something. Well, a dog is a symbol of, isn't it, of a happily ever after, or just a cute little cute couple, and the dog is part of the glue that keeps the couple together. It's part of a shared experience, right? Anyway, the image I really want to show you, at this point I can't find it, but it's basically when you are quite far from that house, then the house is actually elevated above a lot of the other residences there, and it kind of has it kind of looks like a castle, right? I know it's not, but it's this sort of, and it's also not necessarily a white color, but it's a light colored house that is to some extent perched above a lot of the other houses there. It seems to be kind of on a slight slope. And then there are balconies there, and there's something fairy tale like about the house and the balcony. It almost, the way it peeks out above the other roofs, it kind of looks like it could be a castle. Just follow me where I'm going with this. And so someone, you can imagine if there were many parties in that house, if you're approaching that house, you could from a distance see those balconies look a little bit like a white picket fence in a way, but someone standing on those balconies, if that house was just full of partygoers, then people would possibly be standing on the balconies upstairs and drinking whatever. And someone who's part of that or not part of that from a distance could see the beautiful people there, could see the princesses, could see the actions taking place there. And I don't know, don't you kind of get a sense that it's almost like Rapunzel for someone who feels like, well, we only friends and I want to be more than friends. I want to have my fairy tale with a princess, right? But I can't get there. The castle is way up there, and I don't really. I've been relegated to. I'm not part of the royal family anymore. I'm not part of the inner circle, and I kind of want to get back to Rapunzel. I was once a prince, but I'm not anymore. And but you keep seeing maybe walking to class or you're approaching the house. You keep seeing someone standing there, with the blonde hair from a distance. And isn't there a bit of a fairy tale aspect here that she's the princess that he can't get, and that he's a kind of a Rumpelstiltskin? He's sort of a character that is odd, not because he is odd, but because just the community there have sort of found a certain status quo that has now created this situation. And life's not always fair, right? Yeah, the dog is safe. What I'm trying to sort of sketch with that is a less severe. You come completely out of the crime scene fabric, and you look at it from the perspective of someone who's daydreaming, someone who sees this as a fairy tale, someone who's caught up in a sort of a romantic idea, someone who's sort of hanging on in the friend zone, thinking she's eventually gonna take me back. Once this phase is over, I'm going to be back, right? And then she buys a car, a really expensive car, brand new Range Rover, right? Not everyone can afford that. And then she returns for the last hurrah in Moscow. And is he part of that night? Does he go out with them? How does he feel about the fact that his childhood sweetheart is now going outside of Idaho? She's going to Texas. The fact that she's going to Idaho, that she's leaving Idaho, that she's going to Texas, doesn't that mean that's where her heart is? She's following her heart to Texas. And that he really doesn't figure ultimately in her story. Maybe he's misinterpreted it. Maybe she hasn't made up her mind and she thinks it's all going to work itself out, but maybe it's the last straw for him. And I was speaking to someone yesterday where I said something similar. I said, I was in a pretty intense relationship. And I'm saying this not to be self-indulgent, just to humanize it. But I was in quite a serious relationship in my 20s, and my girlfriend decided to go an au pair in Europe. And I was like, why are you doing that? Or like, wait a couple of months and I can join you. She was like, no, I'm going now. And I thought that was very unilateral. And I think there was a message in that already. Like, I like you, but I want to see other people. I love you even, but I want to give myself a chance out there, kind of thing. And obviously 6 months later, not obviously, but 6 months later, she was all distraught and broken down. Please come and see me. Please, I need you to save me. It was literally like that. Please come and see me. I'm so lonely, whatever. And then I went there. But I mean, the initial warning was, well, I've got the choice to stay with you or go somewhere else. Well, I'm going to go somewhere else. What does that tell you about commitment? What does that tell you about where that person's heart is? It doesn't necessarily mean that you are not with them, but it possibly does. And I suppose you could even say probably does. Sharon says school isn't over until May in America. No, they were going to graduate in December. So this is college. Okay. So let's go on to the next reason. So this is number 4. If all the residents were intoxicated, that would impair cognition and reduce perception. So just that on its own. So if you say, how was this crime committed without waking anyone? The simple answer is, even if it was a guy who didn't know the inside of the home, if it was a complete stranger, if everyone inside the home was sufficiently intoxicated, they would be almost like passed out. That would be an explanation. So that's number 4. Yeah, nothing lasts forever. Have you guys seen the TikTok video that was put up where you actually see Murphy inside and you see, geez, I can't even find my own comments when I post them. There it is. Okay. Have you guys seen the TikTok video where it's inside the house and the roommates are acting out the roles of one another, and you actually see the dog inside there? Now, one of the things that stood out to me was I was quite surprised at, don't judge me for saying this, but I was quite surprised that the beautiful curated images you see on Instagram, where they look perfect, it's almost like airbrushed. They look fantastic. Well, now you're seeing them sort of unfiltered, just what's the word? Just being themselves, and in a way they're sort of not recognizable. They're sort of, you know what I mean? They are. There's another side to them in the sense that they're so dolled up on Instagram, but they can, when they are in their own space, they are very different looking. Yeah, it's sort of raw footage. I wouldn't say they're plain Janes, but they look very, very different on Instagram. It looks like a lot of effort goes into each post where they look picture perfect. I mean, they do look like princesses. Funny enough, I had a conversation with someone today, your time, yesterday, who went to like a island paradise. I also saw it on Facebook, and it looked amazing. And I asked about it, and she said it was actually a horrible trip. I said, but the pictures looked so great. I was actually telling my girlfriend when we were in a relationship at the time, I was saying, we need to go there. Are you ready to go to Mauritius? And so this person said to me, it was actually horrible. I was so sorry I went, and it brought back bad memories, and this and that and this and that and the next thing. And she said, why do we do this? Why do we pretend things are so much better than they really are, right? And I said to her, it's because we are chasing a fairy tale. All of us are, right? That's why. We are all trying to find our fairy tale. That's why we do it. The problem is, you chasing your fairy tale may be plunging someone else into a nightmare. So Kaylee chasing her fairy tale. She's got a great job. She's got a brand new car, and her last image on Instagram is a kind of fairy tale image, isn't it? It's not this image. I mean, that's almost maybe how somebody else saw that image. They looked at this image and they saw red, literally. They looked at this image and they didn't see it as a fairy tale, but as a nightmare. They looked at this image of smiles and happiness and realized, I'm the odd one out. I'm not getting my happily ever after. And I'm pissed off. And I'm going to do something about it. Yeah, denial. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So let's continue our analysis through this. So to review how did he do it without waking anyone up. Well, number one, simple, they were all asleep. Part of number one is that the survivors were sequestrated. So if you know the layout, it's quite a simple answer. Number two, no forced entry, so that doesn't increase the noise level, that increases the stealth level. Number three, some of the victims may actually have woken, but just assume that it's somebody else pottering around, right? Number four, if they were all really intoxicated, that would impair cognition and reduce perception. Number five, so where I say if the residents were intoxicated, or some of them may have woken up, maybe some of the victims did wake up, but then it was too late. I mean, they woke up like, what am I hearing, kind of thing. The mere fact that this crime was committed very late at night, so it wasn't committed, if you think about the time that certain crimes are committed, in the Meredith Kircher case, it's supposed to be 10 or 11 p.m. In the Chris Watts case, it's probably about 2 a.m., right? This is extremely late. This is maybe 3:30 a.m., maybe even 4 a.m. If you've gone to bed at 1 or 2 a.m., well, then 4 a.m. are you gonna wake up? Yeah, that's also a really good obvious point. A knife is a quiet weapon, although when you stab someone, that's not quiet. And so I think you've got to ask the question, how does someone kill someone with a knife? So that part's quiet, but that the person doesn't make a sound. And I think one possible answer is if they're in bed, you use the bed to muffle them. You maybe put a pillow over them and stab them. And so you're trying to muffle them with the bedding, right? That could be a possibility. David says, Jay did it. No, we don't want to say that. We don't want to say that. We want to say what are the strongest connections to the victims. That's really the question, right? What are the strongest connections here? That's also not true. As far as we know, no one had their throat cut. All the stab wounds were actually to the chest, but effectively, even if you stabbed in the chest, you're going to struggle to breathe, right? If your lungs are penetrated, you're going to struggle to breathe. So I just want to be clear about that. No one had their throats cut. We know that because Ashley Banfield actually asked the coroner, and the coroner, the way I understood it, said everyone had stab wounds to the chest. And yeah, that's how I understood it. So number 6, another reason why this crime was successfully committed with a knife is simply because of the layout of the house. It shows all 6 bedrooms are, let me kind of go to that. Actually, I don't think it's over here. So all 6 bedrooms are diagonally opposite one another. So can you see, let's bring that up. Can you see over here? These 2 bedrooms are on opposite sides of the house, of that floor. So then you go to the next one, opposite sides, bedroom 5, bedroom 6, opposite sides. Go to the next floor. These are diagonally opposite, but basically opposite sides. So if you had any of these bedrooms alongside one another, one wonders whether he could have continued what he was doing. Certainly, could he have continued it silently? Thanks a lot, Rebecca. Right, let me show you that again. Bedroom 4 and 3, opposite sides of the house. In this case, diagonally opposite. If you go to the 3rd floor, opposite sides of the house, this is to some extent diagonally opposite. This is a really big bedroom. Bedroom 6 is like the master bedroom, but would be quite hard for sound to sort of pass through that wall and then through there, right? And then, of course, does sound go, you know, down? Could it have gone down? And then this is the first floor, bedrooms opposite one another. And so did the killer know that? Didn't the killer know that? Someone says someone skinned a dog. Well, then why was the dog in this house? Why was the dog alive? So I'm not sure if I see a connection there. There could be a connection, but if he's a dog hater, why didn't he kill this dog? I mean, it's a slaughter inside. Sorry for the word. Why not kill the dog? I mean, the dog is going to be an irritant in the way, and could even potentially, in a way, it seems like mercy that the dog wasn't killed. I doubt whether the dog, I suppose one possibility could be, was the dog with the surviving roommates? If the surviving roommates went to bed first, did the dog go to bed with them? I suppose it's possible. Yeah, that is true. That is true. That is true. It's also possible that what happened to the dog, that news spread through the neighborhood and triggered the killer, where he thought, I've got a knife, I want to do that. You know, that's quite interesting. I don't know if it's true. Do you have a source for that where you read that, Jason? He says, read an article that police are broadening the search to just acquaintances. We are going to look at the mainstream news in a moment. Let's go on to the next one. So just the layout of the house would make it harder to hear each victim as well. There are no bedrooms, as I said, next door to one another. Perhaps that's intentionally. Perhaps this house was designed to facilitate nighttime frolicking and that you wouldn't disturb one another. Maybe this is the perfect student house for, right? It's a house designed to be fairly private. Number 7, the attacker had and used the element of surprise. I really think this is one of the biggest reasons. So if the attacker knew the inside, if the attacker knew they were sleeping because all the lights were out, if the attacker knew the access code and so could get in without breaking anything, then basically gave him the element of surprise. So the element of surprise, that alone, although it involves these other elements, can be why it was executed the way it was successfully. You could certainly think the very first victim you could absolutely have the element of surprise. And then there are 3 left. You could also argue that it's the element of surprise on each level, that each floor is almost like a unit. So if you get the element of surprise on the one, then it's, and they're not going to make a sound because of that. Well, then it's the same thing with all the others. Why would you think the roommate had someone else call 911 and not her? That's quite a good question. I think the reason is that person was very upset. This is how I imagine it. It reminds me a little bit of the Amanda Knox case, where you arrive home and you find, I'm sure that they saw a little bit of blood somewhere, or maybe even a lot of blood somewhere. But I would assume they saw blood somewhere. And then they specifically went to the door to ask, are you okay? And then got no response. And it's possible that they then looked at other doors, or it's possible that they were just trying to hail this person, the first person, and they weren't able to. And then this person then called a friend and said, can you, I think we need to break open this door, or can you help us, or whatever it is. And then in that process of the friends coming over, they actually realized it's not just one. And then that person started freaking out. Do you know what I mean? And then someone else brought a little bit of sensibility to the situation where they said, we need to call the cops. And you can imagine, especially a young woman, getting totally hysterical in that situation, because it could have been them. And it's this incredible close quarters nightmare. That friend of mine is alive, but most of us are dead in this house. Most of us have lost their lives in a horrible way, and the whole house is like, yeah, it's sort of painted red in a horrible sense. So I think it's just because they were really emotional. I don't see something suspicious with that. But I do think that's another area where you need to ask questions. And yeah, I mean, someone made a really good point that essentially what we're dealing with here is a contaminated crime scene, just as you had with the John Benet Ramsey case. We have a lot of friends coming over, and they are going to be sniffing around, and they are going to be walking dirt and stuff into the house. And is that why the front door was left open? Because the friends came there, or did they see that the door was left open? So it does raise quite a few questions. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Someone says the discussion has gone to the dogs. Okay, I really wish I could find that image I'm looking for. I did try to send a few images to myself by email, and some just simply wouldn't attach. I'm not quite sure why. Let me just see if I can Google my way to it, because it's really important to me to show you. Just show you what I mean. See if I can find it. There's one. I think that might be the Range Rover. I think the Range Rover we're talking about is right there. Yeah, so this is actually the picture I'm looking for. Okay. I'll be with you in a second. Just give me a moment. So my understanding is that that vehicle right there, that silver vehicle, is Kaylee's brand new Range Rover. See if I can just do that. I think that's a Range Rover. That looks like the Land Rover a badge. But I think that's the vehicle that Kaylee had just bought. This one right over here. Terry says, navigating those rooms in the dark, or do you think there was some light? I think there was actually quite a lot of light. If you look at the TikTok video, I'll try and show it to you. There's quite a lot of Christmas lights inside that house. Quite a lot. I'll see if I can. Let's see if I can bring up that TikTok video. Let me just see if I can find it. Anyway, so here's another image. This is from Law and Crime of that vehicle. But this is the image I wanted to sort of share with you. Not quite sure why it's not showing so well. Can you see how high this house is above all the others? Can you see in this picture just how high that house is? I'm not sure why it's not trying to see the whole house. There's another one where you see the edge of the house, and it really sticks up almost like a castle, the highest house in this sort of tumble of houses, and it sticks out as looks like a kind of a very white house compared to the others. And isn't there a sort of a fairy tale aspect to that house with the balconies and parties on them, but you can see those balconies from a great distance away. I'm struggling to find the picture that I'm looking for. Here it is. Here it is. It's a poor quality picture, but there it is. Can you see how high it towers over that picture? And it's prominent. You can see that balcony from a long way away. Is this going to be a better picture? Okay, this is a better picture. So do you see what I mean? How this house, it's got a fairy tale quality to it. Bear in mind, it was like a party central. But not only is it one of the biggest houses, it's also one of the tallest houses. And then it's got these balconies which allow you to see people on the balconies from a long distance away. And then there's also a little bit of this forest fabric around it, which I think adds to that fairy tale quality, right? Anyway, that's just something I saw and I thought was quite interesting. Yeah, hoodie guy was cleared in the press release. So that's the other aspect that's quite interesting is during the press conference, law enforcement said we are clearing the following people, and they pertinently mentioned the two housemates. They didn't mention their names, just said the two housemates. They also pertinently mentioned the food truck guy, and they pertinently mentioned the private entity, I can't remember how they referred to it, private party who drove them home. So they pertinently referred to 4 people. And then it's hard to say whether they were just talking generally from that point onwards. But a reporter actually had to say afterwards, have you cleared Jack, basically, without mentioning his name? And the answer was sort of iffy, right? It's a really difficult area because on the one hand, social media is such a monster that you feel like for the safety and protection of certain innocent people that you do need to explicitly clear them, especially when you're dealing with young people, right? On the other hand, when you're dealing with an active investigation and the killer's still out there and you don't know who it is, you've actually got to be very careful clearing anybody, right? Often in a case like this, they don't do that. They aren't going to step out of, I don't want to say step out of line, but step out of that legal red tape and say, that person's cleared, that person's cleared, that person's cleared. Because if someone comes back later and they are found to be involved, they could get into a lot of trouble in a potential trial, saying, yeah, but you cleared me. You don't know, you're not actually certain. You botched your own investigation. Yeah, that's well said. That's well said, Pamela. Okay. So I think I've got three more to go through. In terms of how was this killer able to do this without waking anyone up. So let's, I'm just going to bring that image back. Let's just go through that. The correct way to fathom this crime isn't to imagine 4 killings in a house with 6 people. I think I mentioned this earlier, but rather a killing of 2 people repeated. On each floor, he really only had to focus on a stealthy approach to the first victim each time. Then there are 2 more. Because there were 5 people in the house, right? 5 people living in the house. And think about Kaylee was actually not supposed to be there. It was only supposed to be 4 people. And then sometimes visitors or boyfriends spending the night. So Ethan was just sort of sometimes there, maybe sometimes not there. It would be also important to get a proper idea. Had he been staying there every night for weeks, or did he tend to stay there on weekends? But it's basically a house where 6 people usually stayed. But by that time, that weekend, it was really down to 4, arguably 5. But then Kaylee came back for that weekend, right? Because she wanted to show Maddie her car. So in a house with so many people, and the status of who's there is sort of uncertain. Sometimes it's 5 people. Sometimes it's let's say sometimes it's 10 people. Theoretically, there could be theoretically 10 people in that house. Someone and their partner, right? But basically, if someone in the house did hear something, they might dismiss it as just another housemate or sexual activity, rather than an intruder or an attacker. If they've had a year or even years of party activity, then don't you dismiss noises as party activity or sexual activity? And then finally, number 10, the media seem to believe or suspect that there had to be 2 attackers to commit these 4 murders. So that kind of came up in the presser. Did you notice? Someone said, are you looking for 2 perpetrators or 2 suspects, or how many are you looking for? It seemed to suggest that they thought the only way that this could have been committed is if there were 2 people, right? And I think what we've shown here is that that's not the case. That's not the case. Whether there was 1 or 2, from the perspective of the survivors, there would still need to be 4 relatively silent attacks. In my opinion, there was 1 male attacker, and he succeeded as well as he did because he had access to the house. He knew the inside of the house. He knew the victims. Also, I mentioned that he may have used the bedding as a sort of muffler. And I think because he's a youthful, perhaps quite athletic person, he was able to move relatively quickly compared to, say, Bridge Guy. So I also think you've got to add to that, it was likely a young person committing this crime who could quickly go up and down stairs without running out of steam. I mean, could Bridge Guy have stomped through that house as quickly, as quietly? Right? You must imagine this crime is actually physically exerting. You've got to go to 4 separate bedrooms on, basically going up 3 flights of stairs, and do that relatively quickly.
You already know that your
So
free
if the
Camus
killer,
rewards card lets
I
you
think
earn and
I'm gonna
redeem points.
turn that off. Sorry. If the killer had any hunting experience in moving around quietly, that could actually have helped him. He may have applied that in committing this crime. Possibly. So this was something that I thought about just while thinking about the silent aspect. Do you guys think that the killer committed this crime wearing shoes? let me just type it out here. Did the killer wear shoes? What do you guys think? Okay, I really want to see if I can find that TikTok video. I think I emailed it to myself. Just had so little sleep that I'm not quite as sharp as I want to be. It's not that one. I know it's on. I think it's on Fox News. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay. So before I get to that, here is a news article highlighting from the press conference. I think I just need to do that. So I'm going to show you guys the TikTok video in a second. But what I want to do here is, so what do you guys say in terms of shoes? Remy says left shoes outside. Taxis are quiet. Yes, to get traction. John says, yes, I think he wore shoes. Bear in mind, it's quite cold. Joy says no. In my opinion, he didn't wear shoes. In my opinion, there's a lot of going up and down, and shoes can squeak when you're changing direction. Even if you've got fairly soft-soled shoes that might not do that very much. If it's not going to squeak, it may make a kind of a knocking sound, as you're going up and down stairs. It just makes one wonder, was he wearing shoes? If he'd been in that house before, he may have known not to wear shoes. In the David Bain case that I mentioned previously, it looked like he removed his shoes, or that he committed the crime in socks, because they found numerous victims' blood in his socks, right? So one way that you can guarantee not making a sound is in a situation like this. I'm talking about footstep sounds, shoe sounds, is either wearing socks or potentially barefoot. Kay says, do you think the roommates know who did it? You mean the survivors? I think they may have a few ideas. I mean, I think the police would ask them, like, who would be your top 3 suspects? In the same way that they asked the Ramseys that. They said, who could have done this? And Patsy said the housekeeper, and John said a work colleague. And I don't think it was either of them, but the housemates might be asked the same question, and they might be right about who it could be. Okay, so if you go down this article, it says here, this is quoting from the press conference. Let me bring this up. It's quite important to be explicit about this. We do not believe the following individuals are involved in this crime, right? And then he says, the 2 surviving roommates, let me put it up here. This is, I think, really important to be explicit about. We do not believe the following roommates, the following individuals are involved, right? So what they're doing is they're effectively clearing these people. Number 1, the 2 surviving roommates. It's funny that you guys call it roommates because they don't share the same room. They share the same house. But anyway, and they don't mention their names because they're trying to protect their identities, and I'm doing the same thing. A male seen at the grub truck food vendor downtown. I actually know his name, but we want to protect his identity. I did show a blurred photo of him, but he's also been cleared, right? They also don't mention his name, but it's basically hoodie guy. And then a fourth person who they say is a private party who provided rides home, right? So they basically clear, without mentioning names, 4 people. And then the question is that it? Is that who they've cleared? But then the article goes on to describe, so this is still part of this article. Let me put a link to this in chat. That's a good point. Joy says love will make you do crazy things. I think also unrequited love, when you love someone and they don't love you back, definitely. So if we go under that image, it says here, Landender added that the identity of the 911 call have not been released, and then they're going to clarify. This is the part that's not that clear. Additionally, investigators are aware that they made multiple phone calls to a male subject, but said they've reviewed and cleared those phone calls. Now, suppose you could say that means that that's been cleared. I don't quite know what that means. What they cleared the phone calls. I mean, you heard when I played that at the beginning, the guy said there's no connection in terms of we don't see any connection, but they didn't really explicitly say. They said something about we believe this. They didn't explicitly clear the other person. Maybe they tacitly did. Should we play that again? I think it's a bit further on over there.
Hi, Christina Corbin with Fox News. The male subject whom the women called, has he been ruled out as a suspect or person of interest?
Everything that we have taken from those calls.
Do you notice that the question is, and again, it's a yes or no answer. Has he been cleared? He responds by saying everything that we've been taken. So if you get the feeling he's trying to avoid the question, maybe it's just the way that he's answering it. Maybe we are reading too much into it. He does seem to be saying that there's nothing suspicious about those calls, which on its own you might say is true, talking about a dog or whatever. But if you're talking about a person of interest, someone who is of use potentially to investigation that could lead you to the actual perpetrator. They're not the perpetrator, but they could lead you. Why wouldn't that person who's last contacted by the victims fit into that category? Why wouldn't you say simply that, yeah, they are a person of interest, that we are interested in talking to that person? And I think the answer is because they're trying to protect the students. And I agree with that. I agree with trying to protect the students. And we've got to tread a very fine line between asking questions and witch hunting, and deciding that someone's guilty ourselves without any evidence. What we need to do right now is be curious and look at different dynamics and say which one stands out. And again, ask this question, who is the odd one out? Does Jack fit into that odd one out thing? Because it does feel like this is an odd one out situation. Someone who felt like they were the odd one out. Didn't they commit this crime? Let me play the rest of the answer that he gives.
We have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
Do you notice he doesn't actually refer to the person. He says, we followed up on, let me play it again. We followed up on,
everything that we have taken from those calls, we have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
so he says, we've cleared. He doesn't really say we've cleared him. Like you would imagine that word would be there. Because the question is, look at the question, and let's just go back to that question.
As a suspect or person of interest.
Release that, we will.
Hi, Christina Corbin with Fox News. The male subject whom the women...
So can you see how she's being very specific? She says the male subject, person of interest. It's all referring to a person. And that is exactly how what the answer skirts. The answer never addresses him. Do you know what I mean? The question is all about a person, and the answer doesn't really address a person.
And called, has he been ruled out as a suspect or person of interest?
Everything that we have taken from those calls, we have followed up on, we've cleared, and we believe that there's no connection there.
So I think you've got to try and interpret that. Does it mean there's no connection in terms of the calls? And if that is what he's saying, do you agree with that? Is there no connection? And then the other side is, are they clearing Jack? And again, if they are, do you think that is correct? Now, it's possible that they know something we don't. Maybe his cell phone places him somewhere. Maybe he was seen somewhere else. Maybe he's got housemates that knew that it was like early to bed, and that's where Jack was, or that he's writing an exam sort of on the Monday. So he was at home studying. So there may be a very simple explanation, but then why not just be explicit and say that he's one of the main people that are cleared? Why not add him to that initial list? Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to play the TikTok. And what this does is it gives you an amazing peek inside the house and at these kids in a sort of a raw way, like what they really like, sort of unfiltered in a way. This is from The Sun. I'll put a link to this in chat in a moment.
God, it smells like dirty here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy. Oh my God, it's 9:10. Guys, can anybody drop me to class? I'm late for my meeting. I'm supposed to be there 10 minutes ago. Did anybody do their chores today? I'm just gonna do it. Oh, you guys, it's 8. Gotta go. Jake's calling. Oh, Jake's calling. Oh my God, I look horrid. Oh, Murphy, you look so cute. Just get out of here. You seriously gotta get out of here. You're stinking this shit out. Hey guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but like, what would you guys do in my situation? Dana, where are you going? Yeah, I gotta go pull you out. Failed trouble already.
Okay, so there's actually a lot to absorb in this little bit of footage, right? So what I want you to take note of are 2 or 3 things. The one is, and you might need to watch it a couple of times, the one is the lighting inside. So where do you see Christmas lights? And what you're going to notice is there are lights really all over the place, right? I don't think the killer had a problem with illumination. Certainly getting to the bedrooms, right? Getting to the bedroom door. We don't know what was inside the bedrooms, but certainly navigating up until the bedroom, I don't think was a problem really. One does wonder, did the killer take his phone with him, and was he going to use that to illuminate? And that would then place him at the scene, unless he had it in airplane mode. But anyway, so that's the one thing you want to look at, is the lighting from what you're seeing here. I'll play it twice. So in the first playback, concentrate just on the lights, right? Then I'm going to play it again, and then I want you to concentrate on the sounds that they make walking through the house. And think about this idea of, well, the killer's got to do the same thing silently. Do you think he's wearing shoes? Right? Okay, so here we go. So now we're going to concentrate on the lights inside.
It smells like dirty here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy. Oh my god, it's 9:10. Guys, can anybody drop me to class? I'm late for my meeting. I'm supposed to be there 10 minutes ago. Did anybody do their chores today? I'm just gonna do it. Oh, you guys, it's 8. Gotta go. Jake's calling. Oh, Jake's calling. Oh my god, I look horrid. Oh, Murphy, you look so cute. Get out of here. Oh my god, I look horrid.
So if you look at the lights over there, do you think those lights were on all night? Do you think those lights were sort of left on all the time? Because that is quite a lot of lighting. I mean, that is giving you quite a lot of interior lighting. I think the rent was $2,500. Yeah, it is heartbreaking. I mean, you get a sense that these are real people. I mean, right? They are real people, but you get that sense. Stephanie says no. Wolfie says, I think they left them on all the time. I also think so. I kind of get a very casual sort of vibe, you know. Yeah, I also think it was left on. But can you see how much lights there are, or how many there are? That could basically, because it was Christmas time, that could basically have made it a lot easier for the killer to navigate in the dark.
Oh, Murphy, you look so cute. Get out of here. You seriously gotta get out of here. You're stinking this out. Hey guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but like, what would you guys do in my situation? Dana, where are you going? Yeah, I gotta go pull you out. Failed 2 of them already. Does anyone do like a wine night? Like, let's just do a wine night.
Yo, is it okay if I have a party? Like just 3 or 4 people at most.
Why do thousands of businesses?
Okay, it's going to let me get back to that. So now we want to look at that again, but this time through the prism, the keyhole of sound, right? Just watch them when they move and try and pick up the sounds they make in terms of shoes on floor, feet or whatever, walking on the floor. And how would the killer need to mitigate that, right? Also, listen to how loud it is, because it seems like this is quite an echoey house. There are quite a few narrow corridors, especially the staircases are like that. So how do you go up those stairs, down those stairs, without making a doof, doof, doof noise? Now, it could be that the killer didn't do that, and that the people inside the house just assumed it's one of many people coming and going, right? Okay, let's play.
God, it smells like dirty here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy. Oh my god, it's 9:10. Guys, can anybody drop me to class? I'm late for my meeting. I'm supposed to be there 10 minutes ago. Did anybody do their chores today? I'm just gonna do it. Oh, You guys, it's 8. Gotta go. Jake's calling. Oh, Jake's calling. Oh my god, I look horrid. Oh, Murphy, you look so cute. Get out of here. You seriously gotta get out of here. You're stinking this out. Hey guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but like, what would you guys do in my situation? Damn, where are you going? Yeah, I gotta go pull you out. They all told them already. Is anyone do like a wine night? Like, let's just do a wine night.
Yo, is it okay if I have a party? Like just 3 or 4.
Okay, so I'm putting that link in chat. I think it's the second time, but do you notice when they're going up the stairs or down the stairs, you kind of hear a stomp, stomp, stomp. And again, it's hard really to know what to make out of that, because you'd imagine it was quite a noisy house anyway. So someone coming up or going, would anyone notice that really and really pay attention to that? But I don't know, I get the feeling, I think that's laminate flooring. That can kind of, if you're moving quite rapidly on it, things like sneakers can squeak. So maybe the killer took his shoes off or had his socks on. You could even have a situation that's kind of a combination, that he started off with his shoes on, then took them off, right? And then completed what he was doing, then put them back on. You could even have a situation like that. But you do sort of wonder whether this stomping noise in that house is quite normal. And if someone is going up or down the stairs, you'd hear stomping, and it didn't really mean anything. Even if someone was stomping at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, well, it's a party house. And you don't know who's in the house, so you're not really going to pay attention to it. Stephanie, they were making fun of each other. They were sort of role-playing one another, showing how, what agitates them and that sort of thing. That's what that was about. That's also a really good point. Laminate is slippery. That's also a good point. I've got laminates quite, it's easy to clean as well. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. It's kind of coming back to Jack, but do you see what I've got there? What does it mean to be the odd one out? It's a person or thing differing from all the other members of a particular group or set in some way, right? Somebody who differs in some way. So if you take that definition, then who do you think is the odd one out in the story? Who strikes you as the odd one out? Is Ethan the odd one out? Is Murphy the odd one out? And I think that sort of argument where you say, well, the dog is the odd one out is silly, because you really want to look at the human connections, the human drama going on, the human the social status setup that is taking place. What hierarchy was sort of determined, whether purposefully or by sort of organically? Who emerged from all of this as the odd one out, right? Who do you think is the odd one out? And doesn't it feel like even in those final texts where Kaylee says, and this is according to her father, you get the sense that Jack was the odd one out, that Jack wasn't in the game right at the end, where they were inviting him, saying, we share a dog, you should come over. You kind of got the sense that he had really finally got the memo that he is the odd one out. And again, if you juxtapose that TikTok video, you look at the just normal at home vibe and appearance. They that's who they are. That's sort of what they look like. You juxtapose that with all of the effort that goes into curating those Instagrams, makeup, hair extensions, dresses, they look immaculate, but a lot of effort has kind of gone into that, right? Who is the odd one out in terms of because think about social media as the public face, the public perception, the social status that one has. Well, in terms of that game, who was the odd one out in losing the social status game? Whose social status was going up at college and whose was going down? Who was gaining power and gaining influence and gaining attention, and who was not? Who was having relationships, meeting boys or whatever, going to parties, and who was not? Who was having fun, having these experiences, finding happiness, and who was not? Again, who was the odd one out? So let's have a look at your votes. Let's see if I can. Let's have a look at what you guys have voted.
So if you really want to get fit after 50, what's the first thing
Sorry about that. Okay, so 40% say Jack, 12% say Jake, 26% say Ethan. That's quite surprising. And then 22% say Murph. If you combine Jack and Murph, then, by the way, if you haven't voted there, make sure that you do vote in the poll. Who is the odd one out? If you combine Murph and Jack, you've got 62%. I mean, Jack gave Murph to Kaylee and I guess the household. I am quite surprised to see Ethan quite high up there. I guess that is this idea that there's one boy staying in that house. And so he's the odd one out. But think about odd one out as he's differing from all other members in some way. Now you guys might say how Ethan differs is he's the only boy in the story. But I mean, he's part of part of the couple. Is to such an extent part of this little community that he is staying there overnight. I mean, he's part of that I love these people Instagram. So he really is part of that, right? Who's not? Who's the odd one out? Who do you not see, not only in that final Instagram, but in the preceding 20 Instagrams, the preceding 30 Instagrams, whatever it is? Who's missing from that story? Well, when you listen to what the parents said, that they were childhood friends, that they were still friends, that they were just taking a break, that they were in touch with one another every day. Well, maybe they were, but who is the odd one out? That's quite a good point. There could be carpets in the bedrooms. That is definitely a good point. Okay, so let's have a look at some of your comments. I want to see a floor plan with named bedrooms. That is something we would like to see. That's also quite a good point. You get the idea that the idea was to make those watching the Instagrams excited, to put it mildly. I also think so that he does kind of look like a little boy. He looks younger than almost everyone, and I think the beard is part of that. The beard is trying to show maturity, and if you think about that just on its own, the beard it's trying to show maturity, but is there real maturity? Is the quadruple slaying here actually showing someone is incredibly immature, someone who is stuck in some other mindset, someone who got incredibly hurt because they're immature, because they are green and inexperienced, and they don't know how to handle things. They don't know how to handle rejection or attention, and or lack of attention. And you know, if you have one girlfriend, if you've had one girlfriend and then you lose that person, and there's the sense that you know, I can't get anyone else, or I can't get anyone else like her, which you kind of have with Brian Laundrie. Like, how is Brian Laundrie going to replace Gabby? How is he going to find another Gabby? We may have thought about that and had like an existential crisis. This person's my life. They make me who I am. They give me all the supply that I need. But if I lose them, then I experience social death. Then I really am nothing. I can't afford to lose that person. Yeah, so that's also true. It at this point it could still be anyone, but again you've got to look at the stronger relationship. So one of the things that you do see that's I think likely here is that whoever committed this crime has got a much deeper bond with one or more of the victims, and that bond in their appreciation of it has been broken. Do you agree? Okay. Okay, I just want to see if I've got any news alerts coming through, but not so far. Okay. So what else did we learn? For those following the case, I'm sure you'll agree that we learned almost nothing. This is in terms of the press conference. Terry observed to me afterwards that no one asked the most pertinent question of all: is there a suspect? I think we knew the answer by inference. The way that they were talking about it, you kind of got a sense that they don't. But I mean, look where we are now. Is there a suspect? Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. Never make one person your reason for living. Cash says this is the weirdest odd one out game I ever played. Okay. So I suspect the reason it wasn't asked is because it's sort of obvious. There isn't a suspect, right? But at the same time, it's kind of shocking. We are now at, is it day 8, day 9? Almost incomprehensible. Like, is this person going to get away with quadruple murder? After an army of Ali, I think they said that there are 24 detectives interviewing 90 people. Are you telling me that after all of that, you still don't have a suspect? You still don't have even a person of interest? You still don't have anything? I think the president of the university, Scott Green, he basically issued a warning when he said there is a possibility of a lengthy investigation. Did you guys pick that up? him saying that. He said there's a possibility of a lengthy investigation. I actually don't think that that's going to be the case. I think they will catch the killer before Christmas. So really within the next couple of weeks. I don't think it's going to take that long. I think there is a lot of evidence. Remember, if a criminal commits one crime, like kills one person, that's one crime scene. I mean, that person's body is a crime scene. You've got 4 crime scenes here at a minimum. So I think that the problem isn't a lack of evidence. I think it may be, to some extent, a lack of certainty. I think that law enforcement have a few ideas, but they've got to prove their case. They've got to be able to prove it. And that's why I think they've been asking for people to come forward with footage so that they can show someone driving or someone walking, that they can show that someone wasn't home or whatever it is. What does Stephanie say? Okay. Okay. I do think you've got to apply, like, we've just learned a really important lesson in the Delphi case. They maybe didn't clear, so it's quite important that the police do this. They need to clear someone internally. At the right time. So even if they're clearing someone, they must know that they're right to do that. And that can interfere with a scout mindset, with being curious. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a protracted period of evidence gathering, of being curious, of finding out what is going on, of getting to grips with all these various dimensions, the social media, the actual social arrangements, the sleeping arrangements in that house, the patterns of behavior, also the milestones that were about to take place. We know that Kaylee was about to get a job in Texas, so that was going to spell the end of her college career. How did somebody else feel about that? And all that kind of thing. In the middle of that, there does come a time where you need to start making decisions and saying, I don't think it's that person, I don't think it's that person, I don't think it's that person. But every time you do that, you are potentially shooting yourself in the foot, as we saw with the Delphi case. Don't be too quick to rule someone out without enough information. In the Delphi case, it feels like he wasn't actually ruled out. They just forgot about him, right? And why? Because they must have moved on to thinking it's somebody else, thinking it's Ron Logan, right? So what's happening here? Maybe in the interest in Jack, somebody else has been forgotten about. That could be the case. The thing that makes this case quite difficult and quite complicated is the possible number of suspects you're dealing with. It reminds me of the JonBenet Ramsey case where they had a party at their home and potentially everyone who attended that party could be a suspect, because there's also a sense of someone knew the layout of that home. It's interesting how that's how it started, and then it eventually became an intruder who knew nothing about the home. That's kind of what it is now, but that's certainly how it started. Okay, let's have a look at some of your comments here. You've got to not have tunnel vision, but I mean the difference between a good investigator or an average investigator and a great investigator is you know when to start narrowing that focus. You know when okay, now we can start doing that. And typically what happens when you're on the right track is you start seeing more and more, and it gathers momentum. Things just start fitting together, right? When you're on the wrong track, you think it's someone and there's maybe some more information, but then they've got an alibi, or there's something that's a deal breaker in that situation. Someone says more about Jack S, please. We're not really going to be chatting about him. Yeah, I think it's a very good point. Did somebody feel humiliated? That is, Brian says, okay, I think you mean humiliating. When I dealt with mass situations, to me, the key word in that is someone feels humiliated. And this, in a way, is that, just with a knife. And I feel like someone felt incredibly humiliated. Now, I might be projecting. You might be saying, you're not seeing the situation here, you're seeing your own life. You're seeing something that happened to you. And you could be right. It could be that. But if you think about a scenario where someone was a childhood sweetheart and they were sort of in touch every day, and they had this perception that at the end of this phase of our lives, you're going to get back together, only for it to be revealed that we aren't, and that I had my hopes up for weeks and months and whatever, years even. That can feel incredibly humiliating. It can feel like a million daggers in you at the same time. It can feel like you're devastated, that it's the end of the world, that you all alone, that you've lost your best friend, that you've lost everything, you've lost your future. It's the kind of Brian Laundrie scenario that someone either makes your life or they break it. And it can feel humiliating that your fate, your life, your happiness almost like lies in the hands of another person, and they decide, no, he loves me, or I love him not. I choose him not. I'm going to have him part of my fairy tale, not. And then what does that feel like? Did someone feel humiliated? Did that last Instagram make someone feel humiliated? Paula says, I'm not so full of hope. The problem might be selecting evidence, not the lack of it. I think the answer to this case is in the social dynamics, and I think that does take a little bit of time to materialize. I think in the same way that the parents may assume, yeah, but we know him, he's quite a nice guy. It might take a little bit of time to get over that initial shock and start seeing the woods for the trees, right? Starting to see the overall arc beyond the immediate visceral shocking nature of this crime, seeing the broader patterns. Once that initial shock of emotion washes away, some of the people might realize, wow, I actually think I see something here that I missed before. Dragonette says, I used to do the party house thing. Not worth it. Okay. That's quite a good point. Yeah, I think hoodie guy, it looked like he was humiliated, didn't it? But I mean, isn't that part and parcel of the game of love when you're a young person? You humiliated, try again, faint heart never won fair lady, right? Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. That's also a great point. Losing your sense of reality. When you're caught up in a fairy tale, you're not thinking clearly. You know, at some point you've got to start, easier said than done, start letting go and saying, I need to be hands-on about my studies. That's not going so well, right? My love life's not going so well, but I need to be hands-on about what I do have control over, my career, my future, whatever. And it's maybe not that easy to do that. You know, if you just take the fact, where is that image of the vehicle? I've got one here where it's sort of cut off. But if you just take the mere fact that she bought herself a brand new, and here it's not in the picture over here. Well, that's why, it's because it's a Google. That's a Google Google Maps picture. I'm looking for the new Range Rover that she bought. You can imagine you're giddy with. So yeah, you would want to see it, but it's blocked out by the police vehicle. You can imagine someone is giddy about their future. They've just bought a new car and they are so happy about all of this stuff. Well, how do you feel? This is just confirmation that they found the dog in the house. Found a dog in the house. At this time, they said it's unclear who it belonged to, but we do know now. Now, the other thing that I think is quite interesting is my information is that the dog wasn't given to Jack. It was given to, I think, Jack's cousin or Kaylee's cousin. Isn't that weird? Like, if the dog was like custody, like a part of a kind of a custody battle, or just shared between them, why doesn't Jack have that dog? I mean, isn't that the dog in his profile picture? Wouldn't Jack want the dog? Where is Jack? You know? Okay, I want to show you that picture again of the vehicle, if I can find it. This, I think, is the, you can just see there's a vehicle over there. That is the vehicle. But you obviously it's hidden behind the leaves. You kind of get the sense that someone approaching him might be able to look through the window there and look through the window there and see if someone is sleeping. Not sure if that is a bedroom, but certainly you could look through there. This is a bedroom. See if someone is asleep. If you're approaching through that entrance. So there's another frustratingly close view of the vehicle, but that, I think, is the Range Rover. I mean, that is an incredible car. It looks like Kaylee's really rich, or her parents are, or I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but she certainly is doing pretty well for herself. Yeah, that's quite a good question. That's right, Edelweiss. That's right. That's right. Okay. What do you mean by that, Terry? Terry says a vehicle like that says a lot about a person. I'm not sure where you get that statistic, Bella. So what do you think it is about? Mel, her mother actually said, I saw this on another channel. Her mother was interviewed and she said that she bought the Range Rover brand new, I think on the Friday. So she died sort of late, not Saturday, but basically almost like a day later, Sunday morning. But basically she bought this on the Friday, brand new, and she was wondering whether to go back to college, and then she decided, her mother said she was conflicted, and then she decided to go back to show Maddie the vehicle, to share, you know, that she'd bought this brand new vehicle, and attend a party. That was sort of the reason that she went back. Jane says the Range Rover was red. Look in the drone video from yesterday. Okay. Joe Hart says, who cares about the expensive car? Well, I think a young person can feel like a boy can feel quite emasculated when his girlfriend not only gets an incredible ride, but not just that, but dumps him or appears not to be interested in him anymore. In other words, she's climbing the social ladders. She's going on that trajectory in her life, and then he's not. She's going that way, and he's going that way, right? Again, not to be self-indulgent, but I was in a situation like that where me and my girlfriend split up, and she ended up in a relationship with a really wealthy guy. And I remember the next time I saw her, she must have been 22 years old. The next time I saw her, she was driving such a big BMW. It looked like a ship, and it just looked ridiculous. There was this small little 22-year-old, and she was driving this giant BMW. And I presume it was either her boyfriend's car or he'd given it to her, whatever it was. And that was pretty emasculating. I definitely felt that sense of off she goes, and I must carry on with my I must make do with what I have. So I definitely think a nice flashy car, also talks about the fairy tale, that someone's got their fairy tale and you don't. There's jealousy, there's envy, there's hurt, all of those things mixed together. There's anger. Yeah. That's such a great point. It's not just losing a girlfriend. You know, we may look on this and think this is so silly. I've broken up all the time, and I mean, my relationship earlier this year ended, and it's not the end of the world. But when you're 20, especially if it's just your first relationship or one of the first relationships, you know, if you've been saying to someone, "I'll love you forever," forever might end up being 5 months or 3 weeks or something. But the point is, they grew up together, and some people can walk lightly or dance lightly through their love lives, and it's an adventure and it's fun and it's happy. But other people, it is fraught with fear and devastation, right? And exactly as Stephanie says, when you lose a person, it can actually feel like that person has died, that you've lost them, that you've you're losing, as she says, more than a girlfriend, a friend. It's almost losing like a family member. Can anyone confirm that the new Range Rover is actually red and it's not silver? Can anyone confirm that? Peyton says, I wonder why they were breaking up. I just think it's the typical thing. You go to college and you want to have a variety of experiences. You don't want to be anchored, stuck to one person. You want to spread your wings and experiment and test your power and all that kind of thing. The red one is a Jeep. Okay. Yeah, there's a big difference between a Range Rover. I know what they look like. I actually met someone yesterday who arrived in one. So, yeah. So I think that's actually wrong. But it is like, did she buy that on a loan based on the salary she thought she was going to be getting? I mean, what does that say about Kaylee? Doesn't it show that she's very, I don't want to like say anything nasty about her. I mean, we really care about the victims here, and they didn't do anything to deserve what happened to them. But again, with the TikTok video and the Instagram, there seems to be an aspect that seems quite superficial. But I do think a lot of young people are superficial anyway. But don't you get a sense that if there's some merit to the Jack line of inquiry, doesn't it seem like Jack was way too serious? Jack was way too deep in his investment, his emotional investment. Doesn't it seem like the person on the other side wasn't a nasty person, didn't have a mean bone in her body, but she may have been a little lighter, a little more superficial, a little more fun-loving, a little more, do you know what I mean? So that one person's very deep and very committed and very serious, and the other person kind of wants to have fun and wants to be a little bit more superficial, wants to keep it light. Don't you get that sense? Okay, I see. I think the rent there, if I remember correctly, I think it was $2,500 a month. I think that was what I saw. Songbird says, I believe her parents are wealthy. That's possible, but I think they said that she bought it herself. Now, I don't know whether that means they helped her. It does make sense that it would be a graduation gift, doesn't it? But based on the interview, it did sound like they said that she bought it herself. So who knows? Susan Princey says, what would Ernest Becker say about this? I did touch on this, is that there's a high degree of sadism here. And what I think is quite interesting with that is if you say, if there's sadism, what was extremely ANAL? And what I think the answer is, like, it's a little bit different to what I thought it was in the beginning. What I think it is now was someone who was ANALLY fixated on someone who was possibly so it turned someone so much into their own world that they weren't living in a healthy way. In other words, they'd turned their world into a person. You should never do that. In other words, their world is at the whim of another person. And, that can be a dangerous way to love and a dangerous way to live. So I think he would say there's a high degree of sadism here, And the reason that that came about was someone experienced someone else deriving pleasure, and they thought at my expense, and now they wanted payback for that. That's a sense, a possible sense that one gets from this. Do you guys agree with that? Really, Dan, have you read all of Ernest Becker's books? It does seem like someone was emotionally spiraling out of control. So one's got to ponder, what is the relevance of this? Is there any relevance? Have you guys seen that? Is there any relevance to this? And again, you know, if you have an attack on a dog, well, why was Murphy spared? I mean, is there any, does that make any sense? Terry says, something about the Range Rover smells off to me. You have a pretty amazing credit and solid employment to get a loan for one without help, which her mom said she did on her own. Well, we know that she worked, she seemed to be quite a hard worker. She worked in these, I can't think of, was it the something, she worked in some other restaurant. In fact, two of them. But I'm not sure if you could afford a car like that with that. I don't know. It was a Range Rover Evoque. Yeah, so the pictures we do see do look like that. I just want to see if I can bring up another image of that vehicle. Sorry, guys, I've had so little sleep. I've been sort of running all over the place, literally. I'm definitely... Yeah, I can't actually, I don't actually have it here, unfortunately. But these are some of the images I did bring up. Well, it's really frustrating. There was another image I wanted to share with you, which is from her Instagram, but it's an image of autumn, I think, and there's sort of looks like a cabinet, and then it shows you all the, she's put it there, she sort of put all the images that apparently mean something to her in her life. And then you actually see Jack there. You see a picture of her and Jack, and then another one of her and Jack, but there are also a lot of other pictures. It's sort of, this is what means something in my life, and it's like that, and that, and that, and that, and that. Oh, and Jack and me, and that, and that, and that, and that. Oh, also Jack and me. And you kind of get a sense that he's not, she cares about him, and they do have a history, but you kind of get the idea that she's moving on. And isn't that what we're dealing with here? Wow, $45,000, that is pretty expensive. So mods, can you just keep an eye on Dan Barron? I just sort of noticed his comments, and they seem really flippant and like he's sort of I don't know, Dan. I don't know you that well, but I just want mods just pay attention to what Dan's doing. If he continues just being silly, I think we need to throw him off. This is quite serious discussion. It's not really a place to sort of play games. So just pay attention to him in particular. I've just noticed quite a few comments from him that I'm concern me to some extent. That link is okay. So the problem is I can't open the link on chat here. Let's see if I can just bring it up by retyping the whole link. News Nation. Is this the one? I hope I found it. There it is, yeah. So thanks a lot for that, Stephanie. So can you see in this image, if I bring it up to the original, you can actually see, like, it looks like it's a rented vehicle. See that vehicle over there? It looks like it's a rented vehicle. Unfortunately, as soon as I do that, it goes out of pause mode. Can you see that vehicle over there? It's frustrating. Oh, here it is. Here it is. There we go. Slowly getting there. So if you look at this vehicle, you can actually see it is brand new. Look at that. Talk about something being hidden in plain sight, or something being like right in front of you. Yeah. There it is. Can you guys see that? See, there you can see Range Rover Evoque, and there you can see it is brand new. She was driving the brand new vehicle, and it didn't even have its number plate on it. Didn't even have the license plate at that time. So, if you think about the dynamics, you're dealing with all of these milestones. You're dealing with someone getting a brand new vehicle like that out of the blue. You're dealing with the end of the college career and the beginning of a new career. You're dealing with the end of an era in terms of friends, in terms of staying in this house. All of these milestones are playing out, and someone is on the outside looking at these milestones, feeling invalidated, feeling humiliated, feeling insignificant, feeling hurt, feeling devastated. So someone's looking at your brand new car and they're not happy for you, they're feeling insecure. Someone's looking at the fact that you got a job in Texas and they're not happy, they instead shocked, and basically the bubble is burst, right? Someone is looking at you partying and from the outside, and when you smile and you are happy, it actually makes them feel hurt and sad. Why? Because you're not part of that. Now, one thing I must also acknowledge is when I came into this case, I thought the primary target was Maddie Mogan. And I had a couple of reasons for thinking that, but I think of all the 4 victims, Maddie, for a couple of reasons, makes the most sense. And I still think it's possible. If you're dealing with another suspect, not someone that's related to Kaylee, another suspect, then that analysis, that dynamic may come into play. But I don't know about you, my having gotten to know these people a little bit better, it does feel like the primary target was Kaylee, doesn't it? Do you guys agree with that? So let's do a quick analysis here. Let's do a quick poll. Who do you think the primary target is now? Of all the 4, who do you think the primary target is now? So do you think it was Maddie? Do you think it was Kaylee? Do you think it was Ethan? Do you think it was Zana? Zircon says Kaylee. Patriot Lady says Kaylee. Brian says spoiled girls are misleading. Kim says, why do you think the other 2 roommates were spared? Maybe they had a looser connection to both the perpetrator and to the other girls. It's just Robbie says the one who wore skimpy clothes with a hot boyfriend. Not okay. Oh, that's really an interesting point. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. That's actually quite embarrassing. Yes, it does say pre-owned. I think I need to do this. Trying to just wish I could zoom that in a little bit further. It does say pre-owned, so but her mother did say brand new. So, but I mean, it does look brand new, doesn't it? I mean, maybe it was pre-owned. Maybe it's sort of both true. It was very new, but it was actually pre-owned. Maybe she got a discount on it. But I mean, that looks incredibly new. Timmy, I think Timmy wants some attention. Okay. Yeah, a few of you are saying brand new to her. Don't you normally talk about a brand new vehicle just being brand new? Like, can you say I bought a brand new second-hand car? Yeah, I actually agree with Terry that it doesn't really matter if it was brand new or not. That's a really expensive vehicle. That definitely is Range Rovers are a lot more expensive than a lot of other SUVs, and they're quite expensive to maintain as well. Someone else says Kaylee. Yeah, that's quite well put. I would say practically new. Yeah, I think it's basically saying either it was brand new or it was basically so new that you might as well say it's brand new, right? Yeah, they do depreciate quite quickly. But I mean, that kind of is surprising. It's surprising that Kaylee's life was really about to take off. Getting a vehicle, especially like that at that age, must be incredibly exciting. It's interesting that her vehicle's not on social media. It's not on Instagram. Did you notice that? Definitely is quite interesting. So did Jack experience social death? Did he feel like, I mean, so a part of the equation for social death is that somebody else, it looks like someone else gets their fairy tale. And so in the comparison to that, in comparing the equation where you say you are getting your fairy tale, you getting your happily ever after. Well, me comparing myself with that, I'm not. And that can feel like social death. If you took away the car and you took away a lot of the other things, it would just be kids going to college. But now it's you got a car and I didn't. You got a job, well, did I? You are happy, am I? It's that kind of comparison, and also that's where you are in your status, and that's where I am in mine. I'm losing in this game of love. I've lost, and that's your fault or whatever it is, right? So do you guys think we are going to see a lengthy investigation here? Think also about Kaylee's final messages to Jack. Wasn't Jack saying, or didn't it seem like to them that he was hurting and wounded and felt like he was out of the thing? When Jack woke up, I have said this before, when did Jack wake up? But when he did wake up, which had to have been close to or before the survivors of 122, when they woke up, didn't he see those messages? Didn't he see that there were a combination of 10 calls and messages, and then he didn't? Well, did he respond? If he saw them, why didn't he respond? I think the last thing I want to say are Kaylee's last words, right? These are Kaylee's last words. According to her father, Jack, get back to me. We share a dog. Please come over. So it seems like that is saying that Jack has broken off, that Jack has left, that Jack has divorced. I'm not talking physically, but in a symbolic way, that Jack has broken off, that Jack feels like they don't share anything, that they're not going to share anything. And so all that Kaylee can say is, well, we do share a dog. And so is she convinced? Yeah, I'm sure that Jack wanted to be like Ethan. I also want to be part of that. I want to be inside. Paul says, I don't believe Kaylee sent that message. Well, her sister said so. I actually think it makes sense. So this was apparently Kaylee's either final text message or one of the last. That's according to her father. Doesn't that show that there was animus between Jack and Kaylee? There was some animus. Kaylee's sister said that they'd split up amicably, so we know that had happened in the run-up. It does seem to clarify that there were some hard feelings after all. Saying, Jack, get back to me. Well, isn't it because he's not getting back to them? Please come over. Why is she saying that? Because he's not coming over. Then you asked the question, did the dog survive? The dog did survive. Is that because he still cared about the dog? I do think it's really weird that the dog was not returned to Jack. That's my information, was that the dog that Jack gave her, and yeah, they're talking about we share a dog. Why wouldn't the dog go back to Jack? I think that is quite a weird scenario as well. The last thing I want to say, so according to the presser, Jack has been cleared, so we need to be careful pointing any fingers. So it seems like Jack has been cleared, but this is a dynamic that has emerged that not only shows that issues with Jack were foremost on Kaylee's mind. Do you agree that there was some sort of issue between Jack and Kaylee and Jack, and even Maddie, because she also contacted him in their last minutes? You would imagine that that means that there's something interesting going on there. Couldn't Jack shed some light on that? If you think about those words, get back, come over, isn't that because Jack seemed to be not part of the group? Jack felt he wasn't part of the group, maybe because Jack wasn't part of the group. And so now there's kind of reconciliation. Now there's some kind of reaching out to him. Jack, come back, come over. Okay, let's look at some of your comments. Yeah, that is it. Envy, jealousy. I think those are what you're talking about here. So someone says they think the hoodie guy is a better suspect. The only way that I think that argument would work is if you can show that hoodie guy had a very long backstory with one or more of the residents of that house, right? Did hoodie guy kind of have a history, an intense history, and that doesn't seem to be the case. Peyton says, was Jack a manipulative person? Well, when you look at the Instagram, you look at his Instagram, I mean, it's set to private, but when you look at that, what do you think in terms of that question? And I think, to be fair, if you're asking a question like that, I think, to be fair, aren't a lot of kids manipulative? I mean, in terms of their social media, they're trying to influence one another. They are trying to manipulate, may not be the right word. Maybe you just want to say that they want to excite one another. They want to get a reaction from one another. They want to, right? That is what being young is all about. But some people are less good at that than others, than influencing one another. So I think a better question is, was Jack, or how influential was Jack? How influential did Jack feel? How influential did Jack feel looking at this amazing car? I think that makes sense. The idea was that the dog was almost a symbol of their relationship, like a child in a way. But the thing is, Jack doesn't look like a knife wielding Rambo, does he? Look at this image. Does that look like a knife wielding Rambo? Jack may not be a suspect, but this is the sort of opprobrium Ali do need to look out for. Is there someone else like Jack that we don't know about? They may also want to look at Jack's phone and social media just to be absolutely sure where he was and what was going on. And maybe that is what the looking at the pings and tower logs are all about. You know, maybe that's where they're going to get. So if someone's not telling them something, if there's something that is something is missing or hidden, well, maybe that's where you're going to reveal it, is through the pings. We'll see. Kind of in a private conversation, and you might say this is inappropriate, and maybe it is, but I've certainly been, I've borne the brunt of these sorts of questions. I'm sure we all have. But in a private conversation, I was speaking to someone about looking at a picture of Jack and Kaylee, and we were just saying, are they a good match? Do they look like they're a good match? Because that's often the same question society asks, like a student society. It's often the same question friends ask. And it's also the same question a young person asks, looking at themselves in the mirror, looking at their own social media, going, how does this person make me look? Also, how does this person make me feel? But how does this person make me look? Is this person the right person for me? Does it look right? Does it feel right? Is it right? And as an outsider, you can maybe look at that picture and just superficially kind of get a sense, is he, in the same way with Brian and Gabby, is he the right person for her? Right? And what happens when the guy realizes that he isn't, based on what she thinks? How does he respond to that? I mean, that's really bad news. It's not me, it's you. You aren't actually good enough. You don't measure up. You're the odd one out. I could do better. I mean, what is more devastating to hear or to become aware of? That, you know what? I think I deserve better. It's a mortal blow. I mean, just that idea. You know what? I think I can do better than you. I mean, it's hard to get more insulting than that, and it's also hard to say, don't take this personally, but I'm going to try and find someone that I think suits me because you're not good enough. And I don't think it's ever communicated, or maybe sometimes it is, but I don't think it's ever communicated in such a blunt way. Sorry, I'm better than you. I need to find someone better than you. So that's why I'm leaving you, right? I don't think it's really communicated as directly as that, but that is the reality. That is the situation often. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes someone is a lot more beautiful than you are, they have a lot more social power and all these attributes that someone wants in a person. But sometimes maybe it's not true. Sometimes maybe you do have a lot of potential. Maybe you are worth a lot. And then you feel that frustration of, I'm more than just how little money I have or how much money I have. I'm more than just my social media, right? Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I remember one particular breakup, and my aunt was giving me some advice, and she said to me, I was like, I don't know why this isn't working out, and I don't, whatever. And she said, Nick, X wants to sleep with someone else. Nick, no. She said, Nick, X wants to sleep with other guys. Just like tell it like it is. Don't mince any words. Don't try and treat your family member with any compassion or mercy. Just hit him on the chin. Why is she now not with you? Because she wants to sleep with other people. Isn't it obvious? Not a really nice feeling, right? Not very nice. Okay, well, you know what? We're approaching almost 3 hours. I felt like I was winging most of this analysis because a lot of the stuff I meant to deal with either couldn't find or there were other things that I was sort of going through. So I'm really surprised that it's been 3 hours. But thanks a lot for joining me here. This is a very tragic story. It's almost Kylie Rodney times 4 and then times 2. It's 4 young people, but this is not an accident scenario. It's not like could it be foul play. This is like the foulest foul play. I mean, this is totally unnecessary. If they catch the person who did this, it's 5 lives ruined, maybe even more, their family members as well, at least, right? And probably sometime from now, that this person who committed this crime is actually going to wonder why. That they'll remember that they felt hurt, but like, was it really necessary? It's almost that the next morning it doesn't feel that bad, kind of thing. Bonnie says, does Jack have any siblings? It's a good question. It's a good question. We still don't know very much about these people. Thanks a lot, Wolfie. Appreciate that. So we do still have questions. Does Jack have siblings? Did Jack have any relationships in the University of Idaho? Was Jack passing his exams at the end? If it's not Jack, who does Jack think it could be? Who is Jack's prime suspect? What was Jack doing that night and also the next morning? What time did he wake up? Who saw him the next morning? Was anyone doing laundry that morning? And was Jack living in a house with other people? Who are they? What's going on there, right? Eliza says, honest answer the best. Not always. What is Jack's future? Is Jack going to, has Jack gotten a job? Is Jack about to graduate? Where's Jack going? Is he going back home? Does he live with his parents? What's the situation? Marlene says, I suppose that Ali knows the answers to all these questions. I don't know if it's that obvious. I think Ali are dealing with a lot of leads and a lot of lines of inquiry. They can't just focus on one. So I think to some extent it's very murky and foggy, and they're going to try and start crystallizing their way through all the dynamics, all the noise, and find the signal, find the thread. Mitchell says, I think the calls to Jack make him not a suspect. Why do you say that? I mean, what someone does in their final moments is often, what is it? It's material to the circumstances. that's why the phone data review in the Chris Watts case, what happened in the last 5 weeks in terms of texts revealed incredible amount. So it would actually be good to get a phone data review from Kaylee's phone, all her texts going back really the last month or two. Thanks a lot, Susan. Okay, I just want to see if there's anything else that I want to cover. I would want to look at if law enforcement do identify people that they think are suspects, I think they would want to look at their shoes. They would want to collect all of their shoes and examine them. Is there anything else I need to touch on? I think I've touched on everything that I wanted to. So I think the last thing I'm going to do, besides putting Timmy down, is let's have a look at what is in the news right now. So if there's been any breaking news stories. Yeah, it doesn't really seem to be anything new. Yeah, it's a slow news day in a sense, right? Okay, yeah, we passed the 3-hour mark. What have I written over here? Just that she's bought a new Range Rover, or I've got it written down as brand new. Was it brand new? Also, you know, if it wasn't brand new, why did somebody say it was? So are we dealing with a situation where police have already made some mistakes? Other law enforcement said that it's too early to say that it was targeted. I sort of agree and sort of disagree because I sort of feel that it is targeted. Have the police made mistakes here? I don't know. I don't really see that. I mean, you could say they haven't caught someone. Is that a mistake? But do you want to rush to judgment in this? Do you want to declare certain people persons of interest, and then you start the witch hunting? The witch hunting starts. That's going to happen anyway, unfortunately. I think my very first analysis on this case, someone was saying in chat about how the victims were tied up. And I could just tell that was nonsense, that was crap. And law enforcement actually had to deal with that. Law enforcement actually had to say that isn't true and that is misinformation. And while that came up in chat, I kind of searched it and I found the channel that said that. And I thought, because they had the word in inverted commas, I thought this is an opportunist who's following the formula for how you turn blood into gold. Sensationalize, dramatize, fictionalize, what else is there? And basically just lies, right? Turn everything into a witch hunt. Everyone becomes a suspect. Don't care about anyone's privacy. And there's true crime out there that isn't actually true crime. It's crap crime. It is, you just take any case, you don't give a crap about the victims, and you don't give a crap about turning like the victim's story into your own garbage because you're just trying to make money out of it. Please be wary of those channels. Also, just another reminder to the young people watching this, if you're a parent watching this or a student watching this, please tell your friends do not engage with social media, especially YouTube channels. They will turn you into a suspect. We are at that stage where we don't know who committed this crime. And so YouTube are, if you imagine a wolf that is, its teeth are like salivating. That is actually what crap crime's doing right now. They are salivating to turn anyone and everyone into suspects for money. They don't care about you and they don't care about these victims. They care about turning it into their own content, right? So please do not do interviews with them. If you do an interview, do it with the mainstream media. Protect your privacy. And those in my chat, I see there are 1,500 of you. Please hold other channels accountable for them turning witnesses or turning people into witch hunts and all that kind of thing. Let's try and find the killer the proper way, which is you try and respect people's privacy and you try and follow the evidence. Isn't that what detectives do? You look at the evidence and you let the evidence tell you what happened in the story. You don't create evidence. You don't create stories that someone was tied up. You don't create things that fires that law enforcement have got to put out. You don't waste resources by putting nonsense out there and actually re-traumatizing people. And the true crime community, the authentic true crime community that I hope you guys are part of, if you're part of my community, you are. Please hold those channels responsible and the chats in those channels. Don't allow every single high-profile case to become a money-making witch hunt, which is what social media is becoming. And when I did this, when I wanted to do this particular coverage, I didn't want this to be a witch hunt after Jack. I wanted it to be, there are legitimate questions to ask about Jack, and let's do that in a reasonable way. Let's do that in a way where that could be a possibility, but it could be something else. If it's not Jack, who is it? What could Jack know, right? Instead of jumping into the soldier mindset and saying, this is our suspect, this is who did it, point fingers, judge, all that kind of thing. We need to still be curious. We need to get to know these people still. We need to keep an open mind, and we need to continue investigating. Do you guys agree with that? Thanks a lot, Woobles. I really appreciate that. Okay. Final comments. Yeah, let's not lose sight of the victims and the families, but also the other students involved here. Their privacy does need to be protected. What messages are coming through here? Yeah, I'm not quite sure what this is about. Okay. Trishy says the Range Rover was a 2016. It doesn't look like it's 2016. So thanks a lot, Becky. So in a very basic way, the way we want to investigate this is you are, number one, curious. You're trying to gather information. Even if you're starting to feel like this is pointing in a particular direction, your mindset mustn't be, I found the answer, now I'm going to defend it. Now I'm going to dig in. And I'm going to build a fortress again around this idea. The idea is, well, this is something that looks interesting. Let's continue gathering information. Let's continue to be curious, right? And let's build our case. Let's build what we are starting to formulate. That's our mindset. Don't pin your colors to the mast and then start defending that. Don't judge, don't reach a decision. You're still trying to be curious and get information. Do you see what I mean? It's totally different way from the mindset where you say, you know what, I know who did this, and because that is, we've got to be careful doing that. That's how you make mistakes. That's how you don't solve a case. Yeah, that's also true. He had a twin brother and a sister. In terms of the vehicle, the bottom line is that that vehicle is an impressive vehicle. I wouldn't mind having a vehicle like that. It's an expensive vehicle, no matter what year it is, and that would have given someone a sense of her status relative to themselves. And think about the vehicle being emasculating. Wow, look what you're driving now, right? And someone who has a big knife to show that he's a big man, but he's actually not a big man. And that vehicle is further taking away his, or further enhancing his sense of impotency, right? Someone says something about, could it be the neighbor? Again, to me, how you exclude just somebody, could it be that somebody or that somebody? How you start excluding that is in terms of a criminal profile. You're looking at someone with deep links to the victims. This isn't someone who just willy-nilly did something. This is the first murder in 7 years in Moscow, right? The reason why it's the kind of murder that it is because someone feels very strongly, someone had and maybe lost a sense of connection to one or more of the victims. And I think there's a social death situation going on here. That's what I think. Anyway, I think I'm going to end off at this point. Chance of a double life. I think anytime a murder occurs, you are dealing with a double life. You're dealing with someone who wants a fairy tale, but the reality is horrible. You're dealing with someone who has a fantasy of something, but the reality is really disappointing. Often I think, I always say, all murderers are liars, but not all liars are murderers. There's probably an aspect to the killer that is dishonest, that is a fundamentally dishonest person in a certain way. Maybe he thinks maybe he's been living in a delusion that he's a certain kind of man or certain kind of person, and he has a certain amount of influence, and he's been lying to himself. Maybe the biggest lie has been to himself. Maybe. Thanks a lot, Susan. I'm going to sign off here. Good to have you guys in chat. Bear in mind, we're going to monitor the court appearance tomorrow, the 22nd, of Richard Allen in Delphi. We're going to be looking at that, and obviously keeping an eye on further developments in this case. Thanks very much to mods for holding together so many people in chat, Terry, Stephanie, also to all the members, and also to a lot of the new subscribers. If you don't know me, my name's Nick. I've written dozens of true crime books, and on this channel we like to keep things authentic, and instead of being sensational, we like to be a little bit more serious and sincere about a serious subject, right? These are people's lives. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Take care, look after each other, and I'll see you guys next time.